Hello and welcome to another tutorial video of basic fishing. In many of my videos, you would see me with my rod in a massive bend, plus hear my reel screaming and my line being pulled to the breaking point. These moments, for me, are quite exciting and it always adds thrill to my fishing. In this video, I'll be going over the basics on how to catch and deal with stingrays or eagle rays if you end up hooking into one. Hope you enjoy watching this video, and I hope you learn a thing or two on stingray or eagle ray fishing. Now for those who aren't exactly sure on what a ray looks like, this is it. It's a large fish with a wide body with a long tail. And just like sharks, they are muscular, heavy, and have flexible cartilage. Now in New Zealand there are 3 species of rays that get caught and are present around beaches, rocks, and harbours. They're easy to identify. The short-tailed stingray, long-tailed stingray, and the most common of all, the eagle ray. As well as encountering these species, they are usually big as well. My personal biggest stingray caught had a wingspan of 1 meter, but they can grow a lot bigger. The short-tailed stingray is very broad and densely built, and is a true heavyweight. The tail is short, hence the name short-tailed, and has a sharp barb sticking out of its tail, as well as small spikes sprouting around like a medieval mace. The long-tailed stingray has a similar body shape as the short-tailed, but their tail is much more longer, more whip-like. Eagle rays' bodies are brown and have some blue spots around it, and they have a habit of gliding around the water as if they are flying, and they do many jumps around the surface when caught. Their tail is very thin and very flexible, and it's truly more whip-like than the rest of the rays. For rays, they have no teeth, and these are bottom feeders. They feed by crushing their prey with their powerful jaws, but they do have a sting based on their tail, and this makes them quite fearsome. Stingrays, due to the large size, usually live around open spaces where they can swim freely around and find patches to find food. Out here, for example, this is an ideal fishing spot for stingrays. Here in the Manukau Harbour, there are many mudflats out there, which is an ideal habitat and feeding ground for the rays. Sandy Bays is also where the rays come and go as well, and they usually dig up in the sand for many food that is hidden within. Busy harbors also provide a good home for the rays as well. These rays will be anywhere where they can find a large source of food to sustain their large bodies. Rays are usually more present in the harbor, especially during the summer months. The rays, however, stay around in the harbor both for food and for protection, because even these large animals are prey for predators such as killer whales and sharks such as bronze whalers. For those who are interested in catching rays out of interest, food, or just to tick off the species bucket list, here are some simple tips and tricks on how to catch them. Get your bait out as far as you can, and use a very large bait, whether it is fresh or old and smelly. Although to be honest, I had rays take really small baits too before, but those times the rays would have accidentally got foul hooked. Use reasonably tough gear in order to have a fighting chance. Here I had a 13-foot surf rod that was strong enough to handle a ray, and a good quality reel that had a good drag system, and I spooled it with 40-pound line, although I recommend 20-pound as a minimum. Although I have caught rays using lighter gears, but those times were one of those times that I didn't expect it. But either way, thanks to my experience, I was well prepared. However, on some days, catching rays can be a bit of a challenge, and unfortunately I wasn't able to prevent what happened in the next scene here. I got a bit too impatient and tried to pull the ray too hard, and this was the result. In addition, since rays are bottom dwellers, the rig that is suitable to catch them is a rig like the one I usually use. The running rig is ideal because it sits down on the bottom, and this allows the ray to find it very easily. I have caught rays using the typical ledger rig that I use off the wharf, or the poly rig that I use for surf casting or long distance fishing. Any rigs will get the ray, but the running rig seems to get them the most. I like to use heavy trace as well because it will be able to withstand abrasion against the rocks, and when the ray runs, they run hard and will run into a lot of fouls, and the line usually gets a bit of damage from the rocks. I generally use large hooks for several reasons. One is that having a large bait in the water, it will take some time before the pickers can strip the bait off the hook. And sometimes other fish species, such as a kingfish, snapper, or kahawai, will take the bait before the ray does. The hook style I prefer to use when targeting stingray is a suicide hook. It is a lot easier to take the hook out of the stingray's mouth, whereas the circle hook gets stuck too easily to the point where getting the hook out is almost impossible. For bait, rays will take anything. They are not fussy at all. From old to fresh bait, fish to shellfish, these rays will eat anything just to keep themselves filled up. Generally, using a large bait usually gets the ray's attention, and if not, then other fish species as well. So in other words, if the rays don't take the bait, other fish will. Now rays are very large animals, so when they bite the bait, this tends to happen a lot. They run either like a train, bus, or a tank. When hooked onto a ray, make sure your drag is set on a constant pressure and not too tightly. By setting your drag in a correct pressure, it can make the difference between losing it or landing the ray. If you apply too much pressure, this can happen. What happened there was, on this bait runner, I forgot to set my main drag properly, and I ended up losing the stingray in a short period of time. Sometimes the ray also does a slack bite, when the tension of the main line goes very loose because the fish is swimming towards you with the bait. Sometimes when this happens, you could be in for a bit of a shock, since any fish will do the slack bite like kahawais and gurnets. For those who want to release the ray, this is a tip on how to release them. Let's face it, these creatures are quite majestic and are also quite peaceful looking, but many people fear rays for one reason alone: their stingers. These rays have a sharp barb located at the base of their tail, not at the tip, and many anglers fear the barb of the ray. As a matter of fact, the ray's barb is strong enough to kill a baby orca whale. However, despite the fearsome-looking weapon, this animal will use it only out of self-defense and out of fear when attacked. And it goes without saying that this animal will lash his tail around when it's been pulled out of the water against its own will. This method I am using is one of the most effective ways of releasing a ray unharmed. Usually, many people will pull a ray by putting their fingers in the spiracle, which acts like a gill to a fish. The spiracle is a hole located right behind the ray's eyes. This will hurt the ray since it is linked to their organs, and the method I use prevents too much complication and is a simple method to use. After landing the ray, I simply slide my hand gently in its mouth. Remember to feel for the hook to prevent getting yourself hooked in the finger. By pulling the ray by the mouth, it won't hurt them, and this is also an easy method to prevent getting stung by the ray, since you are using the body as a shield. I recommend using pliers to pull the hook out, since it is a lot easier. Then, if you're planning to release the ray, just simply slide it back into the water and no harm done. Another trick to do is, if you're unconfident about the stinger, cover the tail with a wet towel, and this will provide you with some protection while you remove the hook from the mouth. Now before moving on to the demonstration, here are some tips and tricks you really need to remember before you go racing. After casting, always remember to set your drag before you leave it on the rod holder, because rays can easily break the line off, break the reel, break the rod, or worse, pull the rod over. I usually like to set it very loosely, allowing the fish to run with it before winding it in. By setting the drag properly, you are most likely to land the fish without problems than having to lose it after several minutes of fighting it. Now here is a demonstration to show you on how to catch stingray. It was a perfect summer's day and the ray numbers was usually very high due to the warmth of the water as well as the abundance of food. First of all, what I did was I threw out some burley trail into the water to get some fish bait. These yellow-eye mullets were great bait for any species. By having some burley into the water, this allowed some bait fish to swarm around the area. And these were what I was after, small yellow-eyed mullets. These were great bait to use for all species. And after getting some into the bucket, I got one good sized one and I used the head section of the bait. By exposing the gut cavity, this will attract the fish to the bait. And I like to use the head section as well because head sections are more tougher and will last a lot longer against small pickers. It wasn't long before I hooked on to my first ray of the day, and this was a very big fish as well. But after finding it for a long time, I honestly did not expect this to happen, and this was a very close call. I don't know what happened there, but my guess is that my trace had ran into so many abrasion and the pressure that I was applying on the ray caused it to snap off, or that the fish was caught on a keeper hook, and since I obtained a lot of pressure onto the uni-knot, that would have caused it to break off as well. Either way, the lead nearly hit me in the face, and that was the most scariest experience I've ever had to go through in my life. Ever since that day, I decided to use snarl knots to prevent breakoffs like that. After that near disaster, I moved on using the yellow-eye mullet as bait once again. Unfortunately, I was having a bit of a midday snack when I had another bite on. But after eating really quickly, I was able to fight the fish and land it perfectly. This time with no issues. And this was my final fish of the day. This fish was very, very strong. And I obviously knew that this was a ray, but unlike the eagle ray, however, it wasn't moving very fast and it wasn't pulling much line, but either way, it was very, very powerful. As I pulled it in, I realized it was a short-tailed stingray. Unfortunately, the line snapped again, and this was because I didn't wind it all the way to the shock leader. But I was able to get the fish before it got away. This was another very big ray, and it had a mean looking barb at the end of the tail. And it was trying to whip me out of self-defense, but obviously I meant no harm to this beast, and I released it unharmed back where it can grow bigger. Thank you for watching this video on how to catch stingray, and if you're interested in watching my other tutorial videos, please check them out. Click here or click in the link in the description below. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.